stuff and wish some type of supernatural karma onto Scrooge because he was pretty much like a complete perv to her and things like that. And it's like, okay, you're leaning way too hard into making like Scrooge a despicable ass. And I think I know you're trying to do your own interpretation and trying to, because each interpretation of the Christmas Carol, every director trying to do his own spin on it, which is fine, but I don't know. In my opinion, that version seems way too hard into making her like some kind of like it should be like the normal people should be separate from what supernatural thing occurring with Scrooge, because it's supposed to be karma within it of itself, like some higher power is coming at Scrooge in his own accord, not because somebody summoned them. It seems like it kind of takes away. It seems like, it's like when you say to people about like, don't. It kind of keeps like like society like keep. That's why we have laws to keep anybody who's trying to be a vigilante at bay, like. Unlike the way in the past where, oh, you went after my wife, I'm going to get a group of guys and we're all just going to come after you, eye for an eye, blah, blah, blah. All that got stamped out when we got, like law and order and the due process and things like that to mete out proper justice. Instead of having people taking things upon themselves, or in this case, let, I don't know, maybe call it God or just otherworldly karma dictate how to mete out punishment themselves, because there'll be like a better way than anything any human could come up with. And that's why I probably like was like like opposed to it. And the fact that not necessarily she doesn't really have to forgive him, but the fact that it's supposed to, Christmas Carol was supposed to end on a very nice, happy note, and she just still bitter towards him, rightfully so. But it's like, it's this whole thing. I didn't want to go on a diatribe about that other Christmas Carol. I just want to bring that up because I thought about putting it on the list this year, but then it's like, no, that thing is going way too far into like a very ultra dark place. And I think like Jim Carrey one is still have that edge to it, but you still have to end on a good note. Anyway, so this movie puts you right, like props to it, where it's like it's not going to mislead you or anything like that, because the trailer is really, of this film really makes you understand this isn't like your typical Christmas Carol story. We're like leading into the whole supernatural horror factor to it. It's like you open up with the corpse of Jacob Marley. Oh, and this movie is, acted. Now, here's the thing. I love Jim Carrey. And he plays not only Ebenezer Scrooge, but also Ghost of Christmas Past, present, and future. I, am vehemently against the whole idea of like, why would you have anybody cast as Ghost of Christmas Future if there's no dialogue? Most interpretations of Future, he's just like the image of almost like an old depiction of the Grim Reaper in a way. It doesn't say anything, just points to a particular direction. But there are occasions where you have people playing the Ghost of Christmas Future and they have dialogue, and that's fine too. But here you have them, I don't know, maybe it's because it's like motion capture, because this is the same guy who did like the animated 3D graphic animated Beowulf film, and he does a fair, of course, Robert Zemeckis is like a well-renowned director, many things like Forrest Gump, which like I did a review of earlier this year around 4th of July, and Back to the Future. And so like he did plenty of cool movies, but it's like I don't understand why you need to like give him like a actor's credit on a character that doesn't have any dialogue. He can probably just do motion capture, but I don't think you should count that. You can just have some kind of animators create some shadowy entity and call it a day. If you're casting him at all for this role as well, then give him some line of dialogue. I don't care if it's modulated, just do it. Otherwise, why bother? Then you got Gary Oldman playing Bob Cratchit and Jacob Marley, and he also does motion capture for Tiny Tim. Don't know freaking why. You could just have some kind of young kid running around to give that Tiny Tim thing. Colin Firth plays Fred, Scrooge's nephew. Bob Hoskins as Fezziwig. Robin Wright as Scrooge's young sister Fan and his neglected fiance Belle. Cary Elwes plays like a portly gentleman number 1. Dick Wilkinson, Mad Fiddler, guest number 2, businessman number 1. But the Mad Fiddler, the guy who just all he does is, maybe because of the motion capture, but it's just, you know, all he does is play a fiddle. He doesn't have any speaking role. Anyway, so the movie opens up with, of course, Jacob Marley, and it's got a creepy Undertaker, you know, just holding out his hand, leaning extra forward, like, you know, all up in his personal space. It's like, you know, obviously asking for a tip once Scrooge signs off the death certificate, because I guess Jacob Marley never had any family. And of course, you gotta show the miserly attitude of Scrooge, where he's like super hesitant. And kudos to the animation here, because it's like you just look upon like that the shaking of the hands, like he's so miserly. He just like he got. I mean, of course, I'm pretty sure you already paid the Undertaker to do the burial and everything like that. But the fact that you got to tip the guy too, it's like he's like. It's like he's literally struggling. This is how miserly he is. He's literally struggling to give him 2 pieces of coin. And just to add insult to injury to his miserliness, he takes the 2 coins off the course of his own business partner, even though he, you know, part of like the burial ritual back in the day where you leave, you know, 2 pieces of coin to pay like the, you know, the boatman to, you know, carry you to the afterlife, to, you know, that kind of tall tale, that bit of ritual. You took those pieces of coin that his spirit will need to pay the boatman. And it's like, wow, you stick it to your own business partner. I think I really like that part, because it's like right away you understand immediately. You know, you hear this tale countless of times, but in this interpretation, you see the just like the greed, just, you know, and miserliness is kind of taking hold of this guy to this point where he's just like he struggles to pay a tip, and he takes, you know, money to, you know, balance it out from his own dead partner. Wow. And then you get this drone tracking shot, which kind of, there's moments where it kind of drags a certain film, where you could have just either cut it or chop it down a little bit, where you get this drone tracking shot where you see in many kind of animated films. Like you gotta, like the animated Grinch movie with Benedict Cumberbatch and many other animated films like it, where you get like an opening to like the world that you're about to be in. It's like you get this like flying around and look at all the goofiness and the people living their lives and all this other stuff. It's fine to a certain extent. In this film, is just like there's a moment during when the Ghost of Christmas Future pop up and he's dragging Scrooge all over the neighborhood, being chased by these ghostly horses and going through like sewer drainage and stuff like that. And it's like, that adds nothing. I guess you're only doing it to add to the terror for Scrooge, but I think you already getting your point across at this point. It's not like he's just now meeting you and he's skeptical and you have to scare the bejesus out of him just to get him to understand the seriousness of this. But then also, what I was about to say, crap, it escapes me. It was something that happened in the third act, but anyway, it's just like you gotta tone down certain shots that drags on this movie that you don't. Oh, and there's another one where Jacob Marley will be, coming into Ebenezer's room. That drags on a bit instead of just, hear like the lumberingness of Jacob outside of his door, and then like the bells ringing in a Christmas tone, and that drags on a bit instead of just like hear the dragginess. And then I know you're trying to add to the suspense, but that's literally almost like 4 minutes, and it's like you could have cut that down maybe half that time, and you still would have served the same purpose. Anyway, so time went on like at least 6 or 7 years. Scrooge is running the his shop himself, with Bob Cratchit as his assistant. And then in comes Fred, and he's wishing him like a Merry Christmas, and of course he's humbugging all over the place, and he's trying to invite him to his and his fiance's dinner party, and of course Scrooge is not having none of it. It says like, I'll soon see you in hell first, which is kind of an odd thing to say to your only living relative. Sure, it's not too far off from how in typical stories that's how Scrooge will behave, but you went the extra mile talking about like, I'll see you in hell first. It's like, are you Han Solo all of a sudden? But he asks him like, why did you get married? He's like, oh, I fell in love. And of course Scrooge, you understand about his past, is like, he's kind of like left that in his past. He's old and curmudgeon at this point. Or the whole tenderness of his youth is kind of like, just like in my Batman Noel review, where it's like Batman gotten not like super old, but you can argue he was in like mid 40s, getting to his 50s, where it's like his youthfulness of Batman Year One has long since been put out to pasture, and he's forgotten about why he's gotten into this job in the first place, and he's treating everybody like just annoyances, if not the bad guy. Well, Scrooge here is just like, okay, you're maybe my nephew, but I just don't want nothing to do with anybody. I just want count my money, do my business. I don't want to deal with anything Christmas related because everybody's so freaking annoying, and we all know those kind of guys. I'm like, sure, I have my moments here where it's like, I enjoy Christmas, but it's just like the certain people who like, get off on Christmas, if you know what I mean. And it's like, okay, tone it down a bit. It's like I'm invested with Christmas, but not to like a super like treat it like it's its own religion or anything like that. And of course, you get Fred's little speech. It's like, you know, it's like I'm not treating people like they're, you know, same people going along to the grave on their own little lives. They're my fellow man, and like I'll still wish you Merry Christmas, and of course this whole big speech and has like Cratchit's like applauding, and of course this kind of perturbs Scrooge. It's like just go away, good day. I just want to go back to my business. Then some people from this charity come in, try to see if Scrooge can put in like a donation for the children, for the orphanage and shelters and stuff like that. And of course Scrooge is like having none of that. And I'm pretty sure, here's my issue here with this particular scene and scenes like it in these tales. It's like Scrooge is pretty much like a well-known is almost, I won't say he's not like the Queen of England or anything like that, but he's known fairly well around town. Like, this is the kind of guy you don't want to mess with. He's like the old crabby dude in the neighborhood that you don't want to lose your ball in the yard because he will keep it, kind of thing. But you walk up in there and dare to ask him for some charity, and you're gonna be wasting your breath and your time, and you're probably gonna be insulted on top of that. So I don't even know why you even bother. But then the night ends with Scrooge like begrudgingly giving Bob the day off for Christmas Day. I'm not sure if it was like legal or illegal at the time, but for all intents and purposes, they say it was illegal to have him working on an important holiday. So it was like, okay, I want you here all the earlier the next day, that kind of thing. So they go their separate ways. Scrooge shows up at his house, and of course the spooky things happen. Bob Cratchit shows up as like a head on a doorknob, not doorknob, but like the door knocker. And I forgot I remember what I was about to speak on earlier that slipped my mind. Scrooge is like an old man, like clearly, like, cause he's walking with a cane and everything. Clearly, with all the scare tactics they're lobbing at him, you can easily give this man a heart attack, and he's flopping around like a rag dog half the night. And it's like, he is old, people. I get you want to make sure he learned a lesson, but he has to be alive to learn the lesson. So Bob eventually shows up, tells him that he'll be visited by 3 spirits, because if you don't change your ways, you'll end up like me, because you already got like chains like me forming right now, and it's gonna be a whole lot longer than mine when you enter the grave. And so the first ghost shows up, and I always like it when each interpretation of the 3 ghosts, or even, here's the thing, I love the Christmas Carol story. I got the book, the actual book in my room. It's one of my favorite books that I read, and I got it as a gift from the librarian from my high school, because there's 2 books I got from the librarian: Christmas Carol and Alice in Wonderland, because the only 2 books I probably checked out more times than anybody else, in high school, because I love those stories. So as a gift for my graduation, she let me keep those books as a parting gift, and I cherish those books to this day. And uh, and each interpretation of the Christmas Carol story, I always look forward to how each ghost. I'll bring up the whole school thing because I remember doing like a book report on, or at least like a book test or something like that, on the computer about the book that I read, and then one of the questionnaires asked me how many ghosts were that visit Scrooge. I still remember it to this day, and it still bugs me. It's one of those things that stick with you after all these years, and it seems like, oh my god, it's like it's still stupid in my opinion, but I get it. But it asked me how many ghosts visited Scrooge, and I said 3, because you only count the 3 ghosts that trying to teach Scrooge a lesson. But I got the answer wrong. It's 4 because I didn't count Bob Marley. And it's like, oh my god, technically yes, that is correct, and I see your point. But on all honesty, it's like Marley's only the harbinger or the herald of these ghosts. He doesn't really, offer nothing but a warning. He doesn't like teach Scrooge any kind of lesson as part of his introduction. But it still bugged me to this day. But I like each interpretation of the Christmas Carol story. The ghost has to come in a different look than what we typically would see. Like in Scrooge, the Ghost of Christmas Past comes up as a cab driver. Present shows up like a fairy, and of course the future is like your typical Grim Reaper, but he has a TV monitor as like a face. It typically shows us like a skull. In this, it seems like your typical look in a way, where, well, I don't know. In this interpretation, you have past showing up as like a candle wick. Present showing up like your typical look, where he's like, oh, jolly giant man in like a red beard and wearing green robe, and you got like a Grim Reaper looking future. But I always appreciate when they take some creative liberties on how they depict each ghost instead of like your typical look. But I also don't care. This is like a Tom Arnold version of A Christmas Carol that I've seen as a kid. Not a kid, but like in my 20s at some point. I never seen it, but that one year, it never shown up again since. I don't know why. Where each of the ghosts comes up in like more so in business suits than anything unique. I thought that was boring as hell. Like, when you're doing the Christmas Carol stuff, I know there's budget reasons, but you are telling like a story, you get a green light on it, you got to put in the bill for something unique to differentiate between each of the ghosts. You don't have to do much with the Bob Marley type, but you gotta do something with each of the ghosts to make them stand out, to make them memorable. But anyway, Past shows up and he takes Scrooge to the past when he was in a child at like a, not like an orphanage, it's like a boarding school or something like that. And it's kind of explaining a short little sentence from his younger sister that the father, I guess, was a crappy person in his own right. I kind of wish they kind of expanded a little bit. He spent all his much time on this drone shots and long takes of scaring Scrooge, and he could have truncated that and dedicated some time into explaining what Scrooge's parents were like, or at least the father, and how that translated to how Scrooge ends up. It's like that would have been a hell of a thing to expound upon. Like, oh wow, Scrooge ends up turned to the man who left him at a boarding school that he hopefully never would have turned into, but he ended up doing it anyway throughout the series of circumstances of his life. Fran shows up saying, "Oh, father's changed, and he told me to come get you." Then you know, fast forward to, you know, Scrooge being an apprentice at Fezziwigs, and he meets the girl named Belle. And you get some weird animation moments here and there with, like, because there's moments where it looks good and there's moments when it looks horrendous and like you know, uncanny valley look of a face, and it's off-putting. Like for example, when Cratchit leaves for the night and he's ice sliding with the neighborhood kids, and he falls on his butt, and he sits up with like a look like on his face like and it's like, it's unnerving because it's the same guy who did Polar Express, and you know how that looked. So it, you know, A Christmas Carol got, well, I'm pretty sure Christmas Carol, this movie came out after Polar Express. Did it? Yeah, this movie came out after Polar Express, 5 years after, and in between that time was Beowulf. So it's like, when it comes to animation in like the early 2000s, oh my god, he did like 2022 Tom Hanks Pinocchio. Oh my god, man, I don't know what's going on with his animation productions, but they have not done well. I think A Christmas Carol is probably the closest one that actually looked pretty decent. All the other animations, you know, after Polar Express have not been well. Oh my goodness, I don't know what was like you know, his creative team's, you know, mind. I don't know. But anyway, so he meets up with Belle. Obviously there's like a romantic interest, and here's the thing. For once, I think Scrooge was the only one that can one of the Scrooge types that actually still gets the girl at the end, while many interpretations leave Scrooge to be not alone, but it's like he doesn't get the girl that, you know, the girl either got married off or you never see her again at all after his 20s or late teens. And it's like, you know, that kind of sucks that he's like just going to die alone with no kids. That's no fun, or that's not, you know, that doesn't seem right. I kind of wish that kind of circles back in a bit in these type of stories. But anyway, I want to see in these kind of things where, like, you know, well, there's many other interpretations of A Christmas Carol where you see like a more romance between the Belle type of woman and the Scrooge type of guy. But it's like, okay, expound upon, like, sure, they met in the love at first sight. Okay, how they, you know, cultivate that and how that grew and stuff to lead into the ultimate bitter end of that relationship. But they kind of just fast forward to the point where it's like, oh, they're slightly older, they was meant to be married, but Scrooge, you know, got, this is his start of his miserliness, where it's like, oh, which is another thing. It's like, okay, where was the turning point of his, you know, miserliness? because he's just like, oh, he just like this now because he's all business minded. Because I hate to keep bringing it up, but Screws did a better job here, where it's like Frank Cross, it's like wants to climb up that corporate ladder, and run this television production company, and he's done like this like dog costume and on his TV show, and he sees an opportunity with his boss, spending like some time with him to like work his way into proper positions, and that's where he's kind of neglects everybody on his sole focus of earning more money and accolades and all this other stuff, that he ignored the human component to everything. Here, you're just like, oh, you just fast forward, and he's just like this. I kind of wish they kind of like expound upon that a little bit. They usually don't, but I think there's only a rare occurrence where you see that expounded upon. I think we need to start doing more of that, so that way you can like understand his downfall and praise his rise above it. So, he still cared for Belle, but she understands like, okay, I am not the most important person to you. The dollar is your focus now, and I'm just like a close second at best. And so she wants more from him, and she's not getting anything from him. So she leaves him, and he doesn't go after her. At least shows like his, probably one of his biggest regrets. Then the ghost disappears after, Screws get tired of looking at the past. He's, take the candle snuffer, and of course he shoots out like a rocket, leads him to like the trailer big shot, where I kind of irked at the fact that in the trailer you see that shot where he's flying past the moon, and he's just like screaming humbug, but then they took it completely out in the actual film, and I was like, I don't know why you did it. I think that was like your grand shot, and you took out half of what made it work. But then he meets up with the Ghost of Christmas Present, which I like, but I think you need to toe down the jolliness. Like, he spent half of his dialogue laughing, and it's like, are you the Joker? I'm like, okay, Jesus, tone it down, Joker. So he touches, the guy's robe, and they travel through the city and check on the Cratchit family, and he sees like, oh, like, the Cratchit wife doesn't care for Screws because how poor he treated her husband, and the low pay and everything like that. And here's my probably the biggest issue I'll probably have with this particular film, where he sees Tiny Tim, and he's got like a crutch, and he started asking about like, oh, will Tiny Tim survive? And the president says like, I see like a empty chair with like a crutch with no owner. It's like, yeah, things of the present won't change, then in the future Tiny Tim won't survive. Just never understand like what made him sickly. He just got like a bum leg, and it's not enough to end his life for some reason. It's never really explained in these type of tales of the original classic. But I like the part where, well, before I get to what I like about this part, what I don't care is the fact that, you know, Scrooge showing this like level of, you know, empathy, which is fine, but it doesn't feel earned, because it seems like, okay, you didn't give a crap about the neighborhood kids and I think they're like in the way, and you know, like, you know, aren't there workhouses to put these kids in or something like that? But you see one kid who's sickly, or at least, you know, just has like a crutch or something, and all of a sudden you're like empathetic. You didn't even warm up to it. You can have, like, you show Scrooge with some level of empathy. He's not a complete monster, but it's just that it came too quickly, in my opinion.
Phrasing.
But what I like about this part is when, you know, Present fires back at Scrooge what he said earlier, throwing his words back in his face about, you know, decrease the surplus population, as shows Scrooge how non-empathetic to the plight of people less fortunate. You cared only about yourself. And it's like, oh, now you care? And it's like, this is your words, you know. So I do appreciate that. And on top of that, because in most cases they just use the words to throw it back in Scrooge's face, this one actually goes the extra mile by, because it's still Jim Carrey, but removing the beard and changing his face to look like Scrooge, to actually have Scrooge look upon his own face and listen to his own words that he said word for word. That is just like, there's no gaslighting, there's no fabrication or anything like that. These is his words that he said a few hours ago, just so nonchalantly. So I like it. You have that a moment for him to let that sink in. I really like that moment. Then he takes President takes Scrooge to the home of Fred and his fiance, to the house when there's the dinner he's supposed to have with them, and they're playing charades. And of course, nobody cared for Scrooge except for Fred, even though he made like a joke about him being an ass. I still find it kind of funny, but he shows the good nature of Fred that Scrooge pointed out that he got from his mom, his late sister. That, you know, Fred doesn't hold any ill will to his uncle. He more so pities him, because all he wants to do is spend time with his only living family before he starts anything with his fiance and start his own family. Then President's time growing short. Then you see like the, you know, sickly children who represent want and neglect. And then of course you get like the President turning into an old man, into a skeleton, still laughing off his head. And it's like, wow, this is supposed to be a kids movie? It was like, you know, a Disney movie on top of that. But then Ghost of Christmas Future shows up. Then you get this long little shot of him chasing Scrooge with these ghost horses. And then he sees clearly his own dead body. I don't know why they try to play off like he doesn't know, or, you know, Scrooge don't put it together on his own merit. That nobody seems to care about him after his death. Nobody's mourning him. You know, his maid is selling off some of his possessions for some coin. Fred and his fiance clearly, apparently, you know, have like, you know, debt problems. Despite his good nature, he kind of hides away the fact that, you know, he didn't, unlike his uncle, he didn't put money first before love and friendship. And now that he's dead, it shows that, oh, well, all his, you know, most of his inheritance will go to him by rights. Showing that I'm not sure if it shows Fred in a bad light or a good light. Well, not good, but it's like Fred should still feel some level of sadness losing his only living relative. But the fact that he was overjoyed that he get his inheritance, it seems kind of like a slap in the face of the Fred character. I'll leave it to you guys whether or not you find that kind of like a slap in the face to the character, or you understand. But then of course he takes Scrooge to the grave, and he makes this proclamation about like, I will change, I'll hold Christmas in my heart, all that line dialogue. He ends up in his bedroom, and there's a part where I kind of find it cheesy and annoying every time in every iteration of A Christmas Carol. Me personally, I find it's kind of like over the top every time. I kind of wish they kind of, play a little bit subtly than this, where he's like hopping for joy. And I get it. He's like, he's overjoyed that he gets a second chance, and he's, at the things he's witnessed, he's like, losing his freaking mind. It kind of reminds me of a Robot Chicken skit where every time I see it, it makes me laugh, where Scrooge is like got a second chance, and he's running out in the middle of the street screaming, "Ghosts are fucking real, guys!" The first one is like an old friend you haven't seen in a while. The second one is like your best friend, and the future is someone like pray to God that you don't meet this guy, because this fucker's gonna show you some shit. And it's like, ghosts are fucking real. I was like, that made me laugh. Look that up on YouTube. That stuff is funny, man, because like that would have made a better sense with that same type of energy that Scrooge always hopping about like, Merry Christmas, freaking everybody out. It's like, and so singing Christmas Carol, oh, the heroes they shall sing. And it's like, okay, like you gotta tone it down a bit. Again, you're excited, you got a second chance, but it's like, just I think it's enough. Like, I think the right amount of energy to this moment should just be like, Merry Christmas, everybody. Hey, like, it's like, go find those two guys, looking for donations. Hey, I know, like, what I said before, but you know what I said before yesterday? Ignore all that. How much for for the donation? Here, I'm going to double that and sign a check. Merry Christmas, man. And that's enough about energy that you need for this moment, because I think it's like always over the top, in my opinion. It's like, it makes me cringe a little bit, because it seems like, you're overdoing it a little bit with the happiness. But then, of course, he, meets up with the Cratchit family, makes Cratchit a partner, not only raises his wages, but it makes him a partner. Looks after Tiny Tim, makes sure they got a Christmas goose and everything like that, and then he goes to have dinner with his nephew and his friends, and finally meets his fiance that he never met before, or took the time to meet before. And the movie ends with Bob Cratchit, I guess, been the one who narrates for some doggone reason. Don't know why we need that. But that's A Disney Christmas Carol. Still fun, a great interpretation of this timeless tale. One of my favorites. But yeah, it's fun to watch every year. And like, you probably should, if you want to show this to your kids, you probably should watch it with them, because it is some intense moments. Not crazy, but still, it's like, depending on the age of, it definitely is something, if you're watching it with your toddler, you probably should watch it with them. But I think if they're like 10 and above, they can watch it on their own. But anyway, that is the end of this week's Christmas movie reviews. I have quite a few to do next week, because I'll be working kind of, my workload at my job is kind of light for the next couple of weeks, so I have like some more time to put in some more reviews. But I'll see you guys a little while later for more game walkthroughs. Some more God of War Valhalla, some Diablo 4, Overwatch 2. So yeah, I'm gonna put in some time for tonight for that. So anyway, I'll see y'all soon. Take care. Just like and share this with your friends, and let me know what's your favorite Christmas movie, and that's fine. Or at least what's your favorite version of A Christmas Carol? Because my favorite is still Scrooged. Probably like the best one, and it still hasn't, in my opinion, been top since. In my opinion. Anyway, take care. I'll see y'all later.